Dear modern-day leftists, if you want to convince people that your way is the righteous way, maybe don't outright admit that you're high-maintenance authoritarians. Hello, my beautiful, beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of Breaking Badger News. I am your host, as always, the yellow-skinned Simpsons kin, Max Darrett, and it's good to be with you all again. And joining me for this particular episode are the boss, Allison Tiemann. Only Metal Gear fans will get that reference. And have we thought up an intro for Karen yet?
The anti-boss?
The anti-boss?
The evil anti-boss.
The shadow boss. The antimatter boss. And incidentally, I just want to say something to that intro that you did before. If anybody has any evidence of conservatives or Republicans or rightists, if you want to call them rightists, alt-right, actually wanting to completely censor and not allow anyone to discuss any kind of concepts from the left or Democrats or anything, please bring it to our attention and we will complain about that. That's my invitation. We will definitely complain about any examples of right-wing censorship you want to bring up. I'd love to talk about it. Love to. Absolutely. Yeah, just bring it up. And I do not mean that they exist. That is not censorship. The fact that they exist and they have opinions is not censorship of opinions on the left. Okay, I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, also the fact that they say mean words and tell you to shut up, right?
Also not censorship.
Also not censorship.
I mean, literally chilling the conversation, not allowing them to, or alternatively, right people in power, people from the right in power, saying that the leftist or the left is so freaking immoral, and not immoral as in they're taking away people's right to speak, but just their concepts, just what they say, so immoral. That also, yes. And also saying that they should be censored because of that. Anyway, bring those examples to our attention.
Yes. In the meantime, we have to deal with the examples that are allocated to us via the internet. So we're going to be talking about this one particular example that comes from a Canadian publication called the Globe and Mail. So there's a man named Doug Saunders. He's a journalist. He works for the Globe and Mail's International Affairs column, and apparently he's won the Canadian version of the Pulitzer Prize called the National Newspaper Award. Yeah, we're kind of lame like that. We give really lame names to already pre-existing awards, and we also rip off game shows. He wrote an op-ed called "Don't Fear the Deep State. It may be America's only hope." The deep state, according to Saunders and to all you normies out there, is, quote, an invisible and powerful force within the public sector bureaucracy. And apparently, Mr. Saunders hopes that this Illuminati-like organization within the public sector exists so it may oust Donald Trump from his office. Now, just to expand upon this concept a little bit more, Saunders in his op-ed uses the example of this type of paranoia in the country of Turkey. I'll quote a particular sentence from his op-ed right here. Quote, when Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was booted out of office last week, many Pakistanis argued that it wasn't his lavish corruption exposed by the courts that had ended his reign, but a silent coup by the deep state. And apparently, and to expand upon this, Saunders believes, and I'm quoting him here, he says that he believes that the deep state belief is more toxic in North America than it is anywhere else around the world. Donald Trump's aides apparently have, quote, frequently expressed their belief that employees of the country's intelligence agencies and civil service are disloyal and highly politicized figures conspiring to unseat and discredit his Republican administration. He uses the example of Rich Higgins, a staffer on Trump's National Security Council, who said that, quote, the formation of a counterstate at the upper levels of the bureaucracies, unquote, was made up of public employees who were, quote, globalists and Islamists. In Saunders' opinion, the term, I'm not joking here, the terms globalists and Islamists, he believes, generally refer to Jews and Muslims. I can't wait to hear about that in the comments section after, when we upload this video.
The Jews and the Muzzies the Jewy Jews and the Muzzies are teaming up, apparently, I guess. Who knew?
because logic. Because he believes, granted, he believes that there's a more respectable version of the deep state theory called public choice theory. And apparently public choice theory is the belief that public employees are a special interest group driven by economic motives of self-interest to expand their numbers and to seize resources and privileges from the general public. They are not working for the public or the government, but for their own gain. And just to go from Pakistan over to Turkey, I just want to include this other example of this type of paranoia that he includes this in the article and tries to equate it to Donald Trump. He uses the example of Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who believed, apparently, that any public employee was a part of a shadowy Islamist organization plotting against him. And as a result, he purged tens of thousands of public employees for this reason. So, with that all out of the way, Allison, you brought this article to my attention. First of all, are you familiar with Saunders' work, and do you agree with his assessment and definition of the deep state and comparing it to Donald Trump?
No. I in fact I'm probably gonna come from a completely orthogonal angle to this, and I hope that I don't lose a whole bunch of people along the way. I actually think that this theory that he advances that of it was public sector public choice theory. I actually think it's there's a much simpler explanation and much more consistent with systems theory. Essentially what happens is that as our society becomes more complex, the amount of people needed to understand, integrate the data that's produced by the society to create a decision increases and increases and increases. And it's just not reasonable for a regime, for a president and his advisors to be able to integrate, interpret, and make decisions on the amount of data that the U.S. as an entity, as a society, is creating. So this differential, this chasm between the amount of data that society is creating that is required to make a decision and how much data an individual person can integrate and be able to interpret, between those two things is the deep state. Because if you think about it, we can't constantly be replacing every single bureaucrat who's interpreting the data every 4 years. So each year that our society goes more complex, the deep state grows larger. And it's simply because you cannot reasonably expect a president and his advisors to be able to deal with the amount of data that a society creates. And that's where the deep state comes from. And the deep state is essentially everything that cannot be involved in a regime change, because it just wouldn't work. There's a certain amount of people that can possibly be involved in a regime change, and over and above that, and that amount of people isn't sufficient to integrate the total amount of data in our society. I hope I haven't lost everybody in saying that. So the deep state is an emergent property of a complex system. It has nothing. It doesn't even have anything to do with people's self-interest, like the public choice theory. It just has to do with simple information mechanics.
Logistics.
So it's
logistics. Yeah, it's just logistics. And
so what you're saying is it sort of springs organically, almost like human consciousness through the process of evolution. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, it's just a simple factor. There is so much data, and it requires so many people to interpret it, to create, to decide upon it.
People.
And highly trained people. And you can't have that much turnover. So the way that this could be solved is if we could take a party like the president and his advisors and make it so that they could interpret way more data as a small team. Then we could do away with the deep state. But we can't do that because we don't have a completely new language that allows a human being to integrate as much data as a mainframe. So there you go. That's
plus.
Go ahead.
Yeah, plus governments around the world just aren't that competent, in my opinion. Yeah, I'd pass it over to Karen. Your thoughts on this particular issue?
Well, I think Allison is absolutely right. It is an emergent property. It's not a conspiracy. I do think, in terms of Erdogan, there is a truism that goes along with that, and it's just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't all out to get you, So, I mean, it was what he did a function of paranoia, or did he have an actual reasonable reason to fear that there was something happening within his government, within the non-fungible, non-changeable part of his government that was intending to fuck with him, right? And I think that Trump, when you apply this to Trump, I don't think it's paranoia. I think he's absolutely reasonable in his worry that these intelligence agencies, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, that they don't like him. And the reason I'm saying this is, I'm listening to CBC Radio, which is highly antagonistic to the Trump administration.
No.
And I'm listening to CBC Radio and one of the most lefty shows on it, The Current, with Anna Maria Tremonti. And she's interviewing, she first interviewed a former CIA sort of high up and director. And he said, well, we're having whistleblowers, and that's great. We're having whistleblowers coming forward from the CIA with information about Trump and leaking it. And I think that's great. They're taking a moral position. And I mean, this is the organization that wanted Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning executed, right? And for leaking things. And yet at the same time, they're saying, well, when it's something we agree with, we agree with these leaks and we agree with the purpose that they would serve, right? Then it's a moral position, right? Then whistleblowers are great. And then I listened to Glenn Greenwald, who worked with a journalist who worked with Edward Snowden to get the story out over that. And he's saying, yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying this moral argument. I'm not buying that suddenly these people are growing a conscience. Anyone who knows one damn thing about the history of the CIA knows that none of these agents are in a moral quandary when they're being asked to break the law, right? Because breaking the law is half of what they do, right? So, yeah, no, I'm not buying it. And the deep state, right? These agencies, the only entity within the U.S. government that they are answerable to is the executive. And if they are not answerable to the executive, then who are they answerable to? And if all of a sudden they decide that they're not answerable to the President of the United States, then what we have is a collection of highly secretive, highly powerful, well-funded agencies that we already know have gotten up to all kinds of no good, acting on their own recognizance without any leash whatsoever. And you can't, how can that be a good thing? Right?
Well,
so
because they're against Trump. I'm going to just take off from what you're saying here, too. Mm-hmm. This idea that somehow undermining your democracy and saying, well, this deep state has greater power and it doesn't have to take any orders from the executive branch, which regardless of your opinion, was elected by the American people. This man was elected by half of the American people. You want to destroy your democracy because you don't like someone. Just don't elect him next time. Go actually vote.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, Alice.
Times are so desperate. I mean, there's no food on the shelves in the grocery store, and people are being rounded up, by freaking brute squads, and it's like freaking crystal knocked everywhere, all across America. People's that's Antifa. Never mind.
That's Venezuela. Go ahead.
Okay, but
4 years of Trump is not going to bring about the end of America.
But this will. Seriously, what you're saying is that these shadow organizations with no executive control, which means no democratic control, are your salvation? Why don't you step back away from the partisanship for a second? Just step back away from all of the flags, the blue and the red flags and the foam fingers and the crazy throwing the cars around because your team didn't win. step back away from all of that and just listen to what you have just said. Mm-hmm. The government, a bunch of shadowy organizations that are not directly controlled by the American people, by the voters, should take over the government for their own good. No, absolutely not. You don't like Trump? Vote him out in 4 years. Don't appeal to the deep state to take control of your government, to do it. It's ridiculous. For God's sake, grow up.
The fact that this guy, and again, I'm going to quote or refer to Glenn Greenwald. He said, if Trump has broken the law, right, there is a process by which to deal with that. And the CIA is not part of that process. The CIA is not the arena in which to prosecute a president. Right? That's not their bailiwick.
We've come to the end of this program. I love hearing Karen and Allison bicker back, and it's the most entertaining thing, but we got to end this. Ladies and gentlemen, please leave your comments in the comment section below on any or all the thoughts that were discussed in this particular episode. If you agree or disagree, doesn't matter. We all want to hear what you guys have to say. Please contribute to the discussion, particularly if you agree or disagree with the conspiratorial views on situations like this. If you like this particular video, obviously make sure to leave a like, because that really helps us out a lot. And if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. We have tons of videos that come out every single week here at Honey Badger Radio. I want to thank Karen and Allison for doing this show with me on such short notice. And until the next time we do this, please have a lovely, lovely day.
And don't forget to feed the badger. www.feedthebadger.com.